Thank you, everyone, for listening to Soul Talk with host Jeremy McDonald, the author of Peace Be Still. You can check out more about our shows or about Jeremy at soultalkradio.org and jeremymcdonald.net. And now for our show.
Well, good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for listening to Soul Talk. And I am very excited about having my guest today on the show. She has a wonderful, wonderful book, and I can tell you that if you just look at the front cover, you'll start finding healing energy. But the book is called When the Horses Whisper, The Wisdom of Wise and Sentient Beings by Dr. Rosalyn W. And welcome to the show, Dr. W. How are you today?
I'm well. Thank you so much for having me on your show.
Yeah, I've been excited. I read your book a few months ago, well, about a month and a half ago, and I started reading it again this week because you were going to be on the show, and I was so excited because the one story that really catches me, and I hope I pronounced his name correctly, is Wano, the one horse.
The stallion. Yes, the stallion.
Yes, and I think if I remember correctly, you met him. You had a really strong connection with him. And then later on you went back and something happened. He got a little bit upset, if I remember right. And I laughed. I chuckled because I was around horses when I was young. But I have two large dogs. I have a Rottweiler and a White Shepherd. And and I talk to them as well. And if I pay attention to one more than the other, the Rottweiler will go and away from me and ignore me, and if I don't pay attention to the shepherd enough, she'll go and ignore me.
So you understand. So you have a similar experience. Aren't they funny?
Yes, I do. They are characters, and you know what? The shepherd, when I do healing classes out of my house, she will lay next to the person I need to work with. Like literally will point her nose towards them.
Really?
It's the most amazing thing I've ever seen. Yeah, she's a wise old soul in that dog body. So
good for both of you. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's been a good relationship. So I'm really taken by the cover and the horse that's on the front cover. I mean, I just keep on going back to it. And is this? I didn't find this, but is this horse one of the horses that you're speaking about? And is that a picture of one of the horses you communicated with? Or?
You know, it's not, and people keep asking me about that horse, and I wish I knew that horse because I feel the same way. That horse photo was found by the cover designer, and so it's a mystery, isn't it? And it's too bad because there's something about the expression on his face and the look in his eyes.
Yeah.
But that's all I know is that a lot of people respond to him or her.
Yeah, absolutely, because one of the things you talk about in here is that how horses can heal the human heart or help us heal. And and then when you see him, you can just see his energy or her energy. It could be either or. And the gentleness of this horse with the wisdom. But that's what you find when you work with horses, am I correct, is the wisdom and the...
Many of them. So just like the dogs in your life and many people's lives and the people in our lives, they have a wide variety of personalities and a wide range of, I think, thinking capacities. So where many of them are very wise and they seem to have just awareness that's sort of astounding. Others are fairly simple in the way that they seem to see the world. So I would just say yes, depends. And the healing energy part, I think that is their birthright. I think that is who they are constitutionally. However, many of the horses in our world have been broken, just like human beings have. And so they don't access that energy in the same way because they're needing to be healed as well. On the other hand, those who are healthy are incredible in their healing capacity.
Yeah. I have a friend that she does a horse rescue farm here in Florida, and there's one horse that's like 36 years old, and this thing, and she doesn't even put her in a stall. She just walks around her farm freely. I mean, she has a fence, but she walks around her farm village. Her wisdom is immense. There's one that's just, you can tell has just been so hurt. He was one of those, I don't know what you call those ranches where you can go out and you can horseback ride, but they're just rode over and over and over again. They're not given a time to rest or any of that kind of stuff. And you can just tell he's a very hurt horse. And we've been doing healing energy with him over the past few years, and it's been interesting. So to watch.
Well, I'm glad every time I hear a story about somebody that's aware of the condition of a horse and is working with them to heal, because, we need each other. That's what I'm learning. The horses are very much here for us if we are open to that, but they have been domesticated, so they depend on us, and so it's really important that we're there for them.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, there's very few wild ones left. I mean, if you go out to Arizona, or my friend Justin and I were in Wyoming, and we saw a few wild horses running. But it wasn't it's few and far between as comparison to what we used to have.
Jeremy, I've been getting notes from people who are alarmed at the number of wild horse, I don't know what you would call it, but I think that they're being rounded up and sold outside the United States for meat and dog food. Apparently, I've been told, and I was really surprised because I thought the same as what you're telling me, and that I've been told that that they've become sort of a pest in some places, that they've become out of control in the numbers, and so they're being rounded up and sent off, killed, and sent off and used for meat. And so a few people have written and said, is there anything you can do about this? Well, I didn't know about it. I'm trying to learn more. I don't know that I can do anything. Apparently they are in places where there are not enough resources to support them, water and food and all that, and they're disturbing the environment. So I need to learn more, but I have that romantic ideal of the wild horse herds out there in the West running, and there are a couple herds here on the East Coast in Maryland, Chincoteagues and the wild ponies. Not so many anymore down on the Outer Banks of North Carolina, but apparently out west they are considered pests. Isn't that surprising?
That is surprising because I used to live in Maryland, and I never saw them out there, but I did see tons of deer out there.
Well, we all have them everywhere, I think.
yeah, where you couldn't even drive down the road. They were saturated in northern Maryland.
Yeah, because they don't have any predators. Yeah.
Yeah, goodness. Well, let's talk about. I think some of the things we could do is pray for them to find good homes or be protected, and I think that would be something definitely that we could do. But I do understand that makes my heart sink a little bit. I would like them to be protected. The horses out west stuff. So what I'm really and I want to get into kind of some deeper questions, but I'm really, and we talked about before we started on the show is this, and I was just blown away that your genre of books that you've done are very diverse. I mean, you're a professor of engineering, am I correct? Engineering and technology.
Mm-hmm. I do teach in an engineering school. My field is actually called Science and Technology Studies, or Science, Technology, and Society. So I am not trained as an engineer per se. I'm trained in the humanities, in bioethics and religious studies. So I teach engineers, but our classes are. I just finished a class yesterday called Science, Fiction, and the New Reproductive Technologies. So I look at how technology is evolving and changing, and how in turn we human beings are changing in relationship to one another because of technology.
Okay, well, so that makes a lot of sense because it kind of relates to what you're writing about in some ways, I would think, with especially with the science fiction and even with the coursework, because I would think that would affect how we're relating with technology in the world, with how it affects our whole culture.
Well, I think so, and I think that the more we understand about interspecies communication, the more we'll understand about our interconnections. Hopefully, those understandings will affect the engineering and technology that we bring into our world.
Yeah.
Because I think...
No, go ahead. Because I just feel...
Well, I think sometimes the way we engineer is with the sense that everything is discrete and separate. But if we're all somehow connected with different species, then maybe that will change the way we design certain things. So that's really all I was trying to say.
No, I'm there with you actually. That my group of people, I think all of us are starting to realize how interconnected we really are. I mean, it's you mentioned the sense of separation, but that people have. But when you really start seeing from an energetic level or even a spiritual level, you can see even at a certain level, you can see it with your own eyes, with even your physical eyes, that there's an interconnectedness or a fluid nature that just kind of flows with itself. And so, I think one of the points is brought up in your press kit is the man's ethic of the man's dominion over animals. And I don't know what your thoughts were on. It's brought up here, but what is your standpoint on that as far as we men actually, people bring that up. We are the dominion over the world, and I don't know if that's conducive with the idea of oneness or being interconnected.
Well, that certainly is the historic Judeo-Christian ancient perspective that comes right out of the Christian Bible and the Torah. That's our provision. That's what we were given, right? And so a lot of our history reflects that belief. I think that there are lots of ways to interpret that, and one way is to think about it as having a certain moral responsibility. And so I think it's really important that we see our relationship with other beings on this planet as sort of capable of doing great harm if we're not careful, because we do have a capacity to overrun and to destroy and to sort of I almost want to say enslave animals to our benefit. But hopefully we are having new understandings, and with those new understandings we'll do things a little differently. And that word dominion might be changed or understood differently to mean cohabitation or in community with other species on the earth.
Synergy.
That's a beautiful word that people are using a lot more. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Funny enough, I used to teach it in a class, 18 years ago, and then I forgot about it, and then spiritually I realized there is a synergy because I've even tried to change my words. Most people like to look at their pets and say, "This is my pet," or "my dog," or "I'm the owner of that dog." And you mentioned something about how we almost enslave our animals and stuff. And then I realized, wait a second, my female dog, even I just said that is my friend. She's, she talks to me, and and there's a flow between us, and she lets me know when she needs something and that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Well, language is important because it conveys what we mean. We certainly do use the possessive when we refer to our things, but also our people. I'll say my daughter or my father or my husband. But what that means will vary from person to person, and in terms of what expectations come when we say my. Where I have found that I'm having to stumble over words and wanting to change my language, Jeremy, is to the word owner with regards to pets. Because owner is about property, right? And it's not so much about relationship as it is about property. So I'm trying to find a new word, and the best I can come up with is caregiver. But it's not completely accurate because, we're more than the caregiver to our pets. As you said, they're our friends and our companions. So we'll work it out. Maybe we'll come up with a new word as we change our concept of who these incredible creatures are in our lives.
Yeah, I think that with it changes significantly. My Roddy was a stray, and he was found by a coaching client of mine in the forest. Somebody had left him there, and he was so insecure with himself when I got him But I found that as I talk to him, because I literally talk to him, he's gotten to be more secure over the 6 years that he's been with me. And what I find more interesting is there's times where he's taking care of me.
I'm not surprised. I think a lot, and he's probably really grateful because you took him in.
Yeah.
He probably has a lot of, a grateful heart, a lot of appreciation, and when dogs feel that way, they, I don't know how we do without them sometimes, Yeah.
So I'm just trying to figure, now, how did you start, did you grow up around horses? I mean, was that something that you started off doing when you were younger, and, being around a lot of animals?
I have very little exposure to horses. I was an inner city girl in Philadelphia, and we lived on a really busy, crowded street in the middle of the city. One summer when I was about 11, my parents sent me off to a summer camp, which was just outside the city in Bucks County in Pennsylvania, and they had trail riding and horseback at the camp. And so for the 2 weeks that I was there, I learned about, putting a saddle on and putting a bridle on, and we took trail rides sometimes, and I fell in love with a horse named Aladdin, an Arabian horse, that summer. When I came back from camp, I was just distraught. I was so sad to be away from him. But, as I said, I was a city kid, and we didn't have the resources or the space for a horse, so I would fantasize a lot about horses, and I would read horse books, and my teacher gave me a collection of her ceramic horses. But that was it. And then as an adult, once in a while I'd go on a vacation, and there would be a trail ride available, and I would do it. But, that wasn't so often. It wasn't until 3 years ago, in September, when I was in Costa Rica, that I had this direct experience with a horse named Titan that opened me up to pretty radical changes and a new awareness. And ever since then, of course, I've had lots of time to be around horses, helping people to understand what's going on with their horses, to translate for people, to teach people how to listen to their horses, and returning to that herd in Costa Rica. In fact, I'm on my way there on Tuesday, because now I'm very much a part of that equine community.
Yeah, and that's a retreat center in Costa Rica that friends of yours run. And so you just went down there on vacation? Is that how it happened?
I went down there to finish the novel, Waiting in the Silence, and to do some personal healing because I'd been through a really exhausting, difficult year. So I went to rest, restore, and finish writing. And I didn't know, I'd never been there before. I didn't know these people. It seemed to be a random selection based from a Google site. I was just looking for a retreat in that area. And so that, it was, I'm not so sure that it's all an accident after all. Just the way things unfolded, I feel like in some ways I was being led to that place because I'm being asked to speak on behalf of those who cannot speak, as a poster of the World Wildlife Fund says, to speak on behalf of horses, since I'm now able to understand and hear them. I go back.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, well, thank you. I'm really grateful that this has come to me. I feel a tremendous responsibility to do it as best as I can and to remain open. If I don't go there every few months, I feel like I'm sort of dropping the ball on what I'm being asked to do. So I like to go back and listen. A new book is going to be coming out maybe in about a year called Beauty Speaks, which is mostly things that a mayor is talking to me about with regard to the state of humanity and things that we are doing or not doing with regard to our well-being. So the saga continues, as they say, or the adventure, the journey continues.
And how beautiful of a journey. I mean, when you grew up in the city, and in Philadelphia, which you just made me think about a cheesesteak. Sorry, Philadelphia
with onions.
Oh yeah. I used to live in Bucks County, so I used to live in Yardley. Yeah, so I had to go to the center city a lot. But I mean, I was thinking about the beauty of when you think about the beauty of that whole and how you guide it. And I think that's exactly how it happens. The universe, or whatever you want to refer to it as, guides us in a direction that, is not a coincidence. I mean, maybe here on the three-dimensional world, it's somewhat of a coincidence to us, but on a higher, whatever we want to refer to, an energetic level, those horses called you down there, or the universe called you down there, and even the moment of us connecting on a radio show, or the people listening to your story, that's a connection that we never know what's going to happen from that, and that's what's so. I think is absolutely beautiful. Thank you.
I agree with you, Jeremy. I totally agree with you that those who are listening are going to get exactly what they need to get, and those who tuned in are the ones that needed to tune in. It's some people may be critical of that kind of attitude, but I've learned more and more to just trust that things are unfolding just the way they should, even though there is pain and suffering, because that's the nature of the world. There probably, I think, there seems to be reasons why things unfold the way they do, and I just feel that we still have choices, though. So I think I had a choice whether or not to take what I was hearing and bring it out into the public. But when I was hesitant, I could feel in my body a tightness. So it's like on the soul level, I knew what I needed to do, but on the ego level, there was resistance. I had fear about it. I was like, what does it mean that I'm hearing horses talk? Right? But I couldn't resist. I had to let go. And so what I'm learning in my growth is that just trusting, not being afraid, and knowing that it's all just the way it needs to be.
Absolutely.
When we step forward. Is that what you found? Is that what you write about?
That's exactly it. Because I have a business background where when I lived in Philadelphia, Baltimore area, I was running a mortgage company, and so my mind always goes to ROI, return on investment, all that kind of stuff, and I have to see it, actual, that kind of stuff. Even though all of my life, since I was in my teens, I saw signs of how things flowed, but I had a choice each time, and a lot of times I did choose other things.
Yeah, so, we all do.
And then when I look back, because my goal in life was to become successful, have the nice car, and have the big house, and all the things that we think that we want, and eventually one day I felt that tightness inside of me. And that is what I call not being in the flow. When you're not in the flow of where you're taking, your body's going to tense up because it's being resistant.
Yes.
And so when we lose that sight of that, which when we finally start to see it, then the tension starts to go away, and we find a lot more happiness in life. So that's actually how I found peace in my life, is to realize that. So.
And that's what Peace Be Still is about. Yes.
That's what Peace Be Still is all about. So did the horses teach you this, or was it the experience of being with the horses and letting go, I guess, so to speak, that taught you that?
Taught me about...
being with them.
It's both. They are definitely teaching me. One in particular is doing a lot of teaching, and it's also a process of learning from the experience and thinking and feeling my way through it and meditating on it and being contemplative. And so I think the answer is that it's both. Sometimes their teaching is I don't want to say harsh, but pretty direct, and sometimes it's subtle. Sometimes I don't know I'm being taught until weeks or months go by, and then the light goes on, and I have an epiphany, and it's like, oh my goodness, now I realize what was happening there. So, for example, the story of Wano you referred to when we first started talking is a story of a horse that I did have an instant and profound connection with. I was overwhelmed with how I felt about this horse the day I met him, and that night I had all these dreams about him, and in the morning I woke up and I went running to go see him again. And when I walked into the barn, they were saddling up horses for a trail ride, and I went right up to the horse I was sure was Wano, with all this affection and praise and excitement, and it turns out it wasn't him. And Wano, the real Wano, was watching me the whole time. And when I realized what I'd done, I was mortified, and I went over to apologize to him. And he literally turned his body around until his butt was at my shoulder. And he would not look at me, he would not communicate me, he would not give me any acknowledgement at all. And he did this for 3 days in a row until finally on the last day, and every day I would go and say, please forgive me, I'm so sorry. Finally on the last day I was leaving to come back to the United States, to come back to my home in Virginia, and I was really emotional because I felt like he was never going to forgive me, and I didn't know when I was coming back. And I jumped out of the car that was taking us to the airport, and I went up to him and I said, okay, this is it. I'm leaving. I don't know what else to do. I've apologized. I just don't know what else to do, but at least I could say goodbye to you. And he then turned and he faced me, and his eyes stared me down, and he began to talk. And he said, you have this new gift of understanding horses. But you walk into this barn full of pride about that gift and not being able to recognize who we are. You will not be ready to use it until you figure out that we're all different and we all have names. Well, Jeremy, it was such truth, and it just was a stab wound to my gut and my heart, but he was completely right. That I had fallen into the trap of pride because this gift had come and had forgot the humility that has to be with it. And I really needed it. I really needed to learn that and to get that so that the next time I was around a horse, I would take my time to know who I was talking about, but I was also checking in to that place of humility so that I could open myself and truly hear.
You can feel that. I mean, just hearing you say that story, it touched me when I read it. You can feel the energy of him saying that, because it's a life lesson on so many levels, not just for horses, but in everything we do.
I'm so grateful. He changed me. I mean, that's just, well, the book is full of stories. That's one example of where I have been taught in a way that has changed me, and I'm so grateful. I feel like such a relief, you know? Mm-hmm. So,
absolutely. You know, we have a caller calling in, so I'm going to bring our caller on the line really quick so they can talk to you real quick. Hello, we have a caller in on Skype with last name of Johnson. How can I help you? Do you have a question for Dr. Berne? Hello? I guess not. Okay, so we'll just move on, and maybe they'll call back in if maybe they didn't have a connection.
Yeah, sure.
So how many times have you been back there? Have you been back there and you've spoken to Wano, or have you connected with him again? Or yeah.
Oh yes. I went that well. After that, I was in meditation asking universe, as we'll call it, what am I supposed to do with this? What does this mean? And the answer clearly was go back and finish listening and get photographs and begin the process of sharing this through your writing. So I went back for that purpose, and then I went back again as they brought me back as sort of their resident horse communicator during a therapeutic, they called it an Apana trek, an 8-day trek. And then after the book was finished and off to the publisher, I had a dream. It was actually a waking dream in that I was waking up but laying in bed still, and I had a dream that the horse Beauty was speaking to me and asking me to return. She was saying there's more. There's more for you to hear, for you to learn, and more for you to write. Will you come back? And I said in response, yes, I'll come back soon. But I kept postponing the trip and canceling the flights, and 5 months went by. And we were talking about how your body starts to feel tight, and I wasn't feeling so well, and I was trying to teach and start my semester, and something was very, very wrong. I thought, what is wrong with me? And then it was like, well, you promised to come back, and you didn't come back. It's like, oh, my goodness. So I went back. And it took some time for Beauty to accept that I was truly, genuinely committed to this. And that was this past October. A lot happened in that visit between Beauty and Wano's communication with me. I sat with them in meditation, both, and a lot came through. There were 4 other people with me observing, and we all agreed that this material has to be written. So that's where the sequel's coming in, and why I'm going back next week, is to hear more from the stallion and the mare, who are essentially talking about the way human beings have forgotten to access energies of the earth. In particular, they're talking about, they use the words the feminine energies and the masculine energies of the earth, and that we've forgotten what those mean and how to use them, and that we're very exhausted and generally not well because of that. So I'm going back to learn more, to see if I can understand what they're saying and what they're teaching, and then hopefully I'll be able to share that with fellow human beings.
Absolutely. You mentioned something pretty profound, about 10, 15 minutes ago, when you said you're now the voice for those that cannot be heard or cannot speak for themselves. So they have obviously got a message for us, for humanity, and you're bringing that up as well, about how we've forgotten. What are some of the things that they could that they're giving as guidance to the human race?
Well, what happens with certain horses, they can pick a lot up about a person as the person approaches, and I think it's partly just evolutionary. They're herd animals, they are prey, so they have to be extremely sensitive and aware of what's coming in their direction. And I think that their senses are such as that they can see and feel things that maybe we humans don't do so readily. Also partly because their heart organ is so large, their heart chakra is huge, and the amount of blood that they pump relative to ours is many, many, many times more, so they can feel and sense what's going on with us from the heart level. So what Beauty and Wano talk about is what they have been sensing and feeling in the people who come and ride them. And so they've got now, this place has been open for a number of years. They've got a number of years of experience with many people coming, because this place is also always booked. So on any given day, they're going to meet quite a number of people and ride with them. So from their observations and experiences of sensing and feeling people, they're talking about, for example, Wano said that a lot of male humans feel to him like geldings, and geldings are, as you know, the horses that have been castrated. And I asked him what he means by that, and he said they've forgotten the true source of their energy, their masculine energy, and they've forgotten how to use it and what it means. And so Wano talks about how the mare Beauty, who's responsible for the well-being of the herd, can only truly take care of the herd because he energetically supports her, and that a lot of male humans have forgotten how to run the energy that way. And Beauty talks about those who have chosen to run the feminine energy have 2 choices. They can be the receivers of other people's needs and energies and run that through themselves to help support people, or they can actually be those who sustain and energize others through that energy. But she said that we've forgotten where to get that energy, so we take it from ourselves and then we get completely exhausted and run ourselves down. So she told me that I need to come back, and I'm going to go back and see if I can understand more deeply what she's talking about and what it means and what we need to do to help ourselves.
That's interesting, because I've been in contemplation about this for about 3, 4 weeks now in meditation, where I'm pondering the question that we've made feminine female and masculine man or male, and I'm like, and it just hit me one day. I'm just pondering. I'm not saying I've got the right answer here, but that those are same or similar, but not the same, because male to me identifies human, or like the physical, and masculine is an energy or an essence of a being, I guess would be the way to put it, and then feminine would be an essence or a way of being. but the female is the physical aspect of that. And so I'm like, Cindy, I'm wondering if we take feminine and just make it only female and miss the point of the wholeness of that, of the spirit of it. And, it's just something I've been pondering. So.
Well, I think we're on a similar wavelength here, and, of course, how a lot of understandings come to a lot of us at the same time, right? So I'm not surprised that you've been thinking about this. I wasn't thinking about this until when I was there in November or October. But they didn't use the word, they weren't referring to men and women in particular. They were referring to energies that we choose to run and to use to support our beings and to support one another. The only mention of male was when Juana was talking about the male humans who ride him. And so I got the feeling that they're saying we have choices in which energies we access and how we use them, and that the feminine and the masculine are available to all of us.
Yeah, we're both masculine and feminine, and this has actually come up because I'm actually helping a young man that is becoming a woman, and I've been discussing the fact that even though you're changing gender, doesn't mean you're not masculine and feminine. Because that's in all of us. So.
Absolutely. And personally, I have to tell you that one of the things I realized myself in the last few years is that for lots of reasons I was carrying less feminine energy than I knew I had access to or that I wanted. Even in my heterosexual relationships, I didn't know sort of how to experience that in a way that didn't feel, pink. I don't know how to say it, pink. And I'm learning, what that means. And it's not what Hollywood portrays. It's not. It has to do more with receiving energies and supportive energies. And so I'm really excited because experimenting with those feelings inside myself and coming into a balance with those different masculine and feminine energies is delightful, actually, just delightful. So whatever our gender choices are, the energies are available to all of us, and we can experiment with how it feels in us to balance them in different ways. But I think
go ahead.
What I think Beauty and Juana are talking about is the lack of health in us when we forget where to resource and how to resource ourselves. And I think, there was a book years ago, and I'm not remembering the name, but it had to do with how we tend to, because we've forgotten, we take those energies from each other, and we deplete each other. And I think this is back to a similar theme about forgetting the source of our being and finding ways to resource correctly.
Yeah, absolutely. There's just so many things because when we're too dominantly masculine, I guess that you taking from that energy. I would say if you were you would almost take that feminine energy or almost like overpower it in somebody else. There wouldn't be a flow or a give and take between you and that person or persons or energies. I think, and then that would affect your health on a not just physical but energetically.
Yes.
Really affecting on a really high level. Well, and because that my whole side was I was very predominantly masculine and pulling from that masculine energy, and then my mother passed away. And her energy of feminine came to me in spirit and started teaching me how to be more of that receiving and that receiving of energies and stuff like that. And she's taught me that over the past couple of years. And
that's beautiful. And do you feel different?
I can tell. I mean, I had found peace in my life on a very deep level, but she's taught me how to get it even deeper into it to where you just fall into the essence of life and the flow of life, and it's very different feeling to be in balance with both. And that's it's very, very beautiful.
Jeremy, I have to ask you, if you don't mind, is that book, Peace Be Still, does it talk about your mother and her passing and what she's taught you since she's been gone?
It doesn't. The new one is talking about that. I finished the book sitting in her hospital room, so you can actually tell when I switch energies in the book. And editors will probably go crazy over it, but
I see.
But the second one is about how I went on tour with the book and about how she taught me all that and was talking to me the whole time.
Okay. We'll have to look for that.
Yeah, so we'll definitely let you know. So I have a question for you. So are you able to communicate with other animals, or is it just the horses, or is it how does that work now that you have the ability to?
Well, it's just the horses right now. I seem to be, that seems to be the request of the universe, is that I'm working with horses. Since then, I will say that I notice animals differently than I used to, and they seem to notice me differently. I might be on a walking trail, and people will come by with their dogs, and the dogs will wander in my direction. That never used to happen before. So there must be something in the vibe that's shifted. But only one time recently, I went to a book club of lots of people who ride horses, and they'd asked me to come talk about the book When the Horses Whisper. When I got there, she told me just a minute, I have to put the dog in the back room. And then she was explaining to me that she had to lock him away because he's been wandering away and getting lost, and she was really worried about him, and that he never used to wander before, and she has no idea what was happening. Well, I had an intuition that maybe if she brought him out to the group, I could just ask him. And I didn't know because I had never done this with dogs before. Well, he came out, and I asked him, and I didn't get the answer the way I get it with the horses, where I actually hear words, but I did get a very strong message that he's lonely for other dogs, and that's what he's doing when he leaves. He's looking for companionship. And the woman said, "Oh, I'm not surprised. He loves dogs. When dogs come to visit, her kids come home with their dogs. She said, he's so excited. Oh, no, I have to get another dog." And I said, "Well, I think so." So that was a pretty clear intuition. Now, it's different than with the horses. I don't know why. So I'm just doing what I'm told. I'm just following with the horses right now. And if other species begin to emerge, I'll be open.
Along those lines, it just popped into my head because this experience I have. Do the horses with my dogs, with Max, the Roddy, he has this goofy body, and he's really clumsy, and he's silly, and all that kind of stuff. But if I get quiet, I can hear this voice coming from him in my mind, where it's very almost like this wise old soul. And if I really pay attention to him, he gives me pretty solid advice. But then it'll be a very soothing voice, and then all of a sudden he'll see a squirrel, and I'll hear, "Ooh, squirrel!" And it's like he reverts back to his dog self, just for a second, and then he goes back into this old soul. And my shepherd, not as much. She's always very calm. We used to call her Shaman Dog because she was my mother's dog. But I didn't know if the horses have a similar experience where they're almost like, of course, horses are very still in some ways because of their mannerisms, but I guess they're all different too.
Well, here's an illustration that I think gets to your point. So my daughter took the photographs in the book, so she comes with me sometimes when I go to see horses. And we walked into a stable, I guess that's what you'd call it, where there are like 6 stalls on each side of this center aisle in this big barn. Actually, it's a barn. And my daughter's very observant, so she said to me later, she said, "Ma, I noticed that the horses were all sort of agitated or active. It was a very hot summer day, and they were swishing their tails because there were lots of flies, and they were shaking their heads, and they were very sort of agitated in their stalls." She said, "As soon as you began to talk to one, and that one began to respond to you, all the horses got really still at the same time." So I think that what she was observing is that what you were talking about with your dog, in the moment that we're in that connection, the flow is happening, they get very still. And then when the flow is broken, they go back to being horses. Right? So chomping on the straw or swishing their tails or whatever they're going to do. But she was right. And I noticed that afterwards, that whenever I'm in a group of horses, they all seem to get still at the same time as soon as that flow begins.
I think that's cool.
You have a rot. I, for a while, had a half rot, half lab. He was 105 pounds, big old blockhead like rots have, and the stubby tail that had been... Actually, they didn't cut his tail. That was part of the problem. He would swish things off the table when he walked by because he's a big old clunky guy. He was on the third floor of our house one day. Third floor, and I'm downstairs on the first. And very, very quietly, I began to get tearful about something. No sobbing, nothing audible, just tears streaming from my eyes. And then I hear him click, click, click down the 3 flights of steps to come. And he walks in and he comes right over to me, takes that big old blockhead, puts it on my knee, and stares at me in the eyes. Now, at the time, I was not so open to hearing and communicating, but I did know that he had come down to ask me if I was okay and to keep me company because he could feel the sadness. So do you think it's possible that animals, including us, all have the capacity to sense one another, but that for some reason we have shut ourselves off from that largely?
Absolutely. I know that's it. Because I have somewhat of a similar story. The rot I had before him was my roommate's dog, and she had bone cancer. And the night that my roommate was going off and being away from the house, and I had literally taken care of her the last month of her life. And so I called him up and I said, you need to come home because she's starting. My mother was a nurse. She lived in the house next to us. And she had said, Jared, she's starting to get the tumors in her brain. I could just tell by the way her are. And so I called him home, and he got into a little bit of a fight with me. And Mandy was next door at my mother's house. And she started walking towards the door of my mother's house to get next door, and Mom opened up the door, and she literally stumbled across the yard to our house and then collapsed halfway there. And she was trying to get to him, to get to us. And when we got him outside finally, and he laid down with her on the ground, her body finally relaxed. So she knew that he was upset and crying because he didn't want to lose her. And so she literally sensed that. And so I know that they feel us and they understand us, and their compassion. I mean, we can learn so much about compassion from animals that it's utterly just amazing. My dogs are probably my greatest spiritual teachers because for the longest time I did my radio show out of a studio. I went into an office studio that I had it in and all that kind of stuff, and then I decided I want to be at home. And my dogs literally lay in here with me while I do a show. And my rot never is quiet unless I'm on a show.
Yeah, they're talkative, aren't they?
Yeah, he will talk and he will bark, and the shepherd will literally talk to me, but they're very barky dogs. But when I'm doing a show, they're absolutely quiet. I was nervous about that. But I talked to them before the show, and I said, all right, I'm ready to go on a show, and they'll lay down and go sleep. So they know.
Well, say hey to them for me.
Absolutely, I will. Well, they feel your energy, so I know they can feel that. So, and that's what So, it's interesting because there's an energy exchange, a very solid energy exchange that I can feel from you when you're talking about the horses, and there is, which is an energy exchange anytime we interact, obviously, between human beings, but it really sinks right into your heart, and I can tell that they've healed your heart on some levels. On a big level, it feels like. And how did that work out? Was it just them talking to you, or is it just being in their presence?
Well, I did have a very particular experience with a horse named Conan that's described in When the Horses Whisper. And that has to do with spending a number of days with him on a pretty arduous trek through the mountainous regions of northern Costa Rica. And in the process of being with him, Conan helped me realize that I was carrying a lot of fear and a lot of fear about not being able to control life, some of the things that happen in life, feeling helpless. And it was a really important realization for me to come to terms with having to let go of that need to control and to open up to the possibility of others stepping in to support and help me, and that we need each other, how much we really need each other. And that was the beginning of a heart journey of healing. I have a long way to go with this old ticker of mine, but they are helping me tremendously to be at ease, to let go of some of those fears, to trust that others who care really can help, and that we're all in this together. We're truly all in this together. So I'm hoping to continue to grow, Jeremy. I'm hoping to continue to grow, and being with them, because they are heart-centered creatures, I think is part of it. Just being open when I'm with them, and actually literally going into my heart and feeling it. I have to tell you, until this year, I couldn't feel my heartbeat unless I had sprinted or something had happened to cause a lot of adrenaline rush, and then it would pound, but I couldn't feel it. And it made me sad, like I had disconnected with it. And well, ever since I've been doing this work with the horses and more work around energy in the heart center combined, I can now go in and ask my heart a question and get an answer from my heart, rather than from the cerebral cortex part of my brain that's very analytical and very judging, right? So I'm learning to integrate my brain with my heart more and more, and a lot of that I give credit to from the horses.
Wow. That's absolutely wonderful. And it healing happens when it's supposed to. You know what I mean?
And I guess when we're ready, huh? When we're ready.
Yeah.
And also, I think
we
use. I'm sorry?
Go ahead.
Well, you used the word. Oh, we're both talking because we're excited about this. Okay, I'm going to be quiet. I'm listening.
I was just saying that when the student is ready, then the teacher comes. You know.
Well, and isn't it fascinating? Maybe they come in different forms, huh? We think of the teacher at the blackboard, but maybe they come in different species.
Absolutely. Yeah, well, look at I know you've had many teachers. I mean, I would think of a teacher as you know, somebody that I would go to a class, and I would go to her, you know, I'd go to the university, I'd pay for the class, and I'd be there, and, you know, I'd learn from you, and I'd read books, and you'd give me stuff to do, all that kind of stuff, and to practice, but that's still the nature of what these teachers are teaching you, because they're giving you stuff to ponder, stuff to think about, and stuff to do, and you're learning. I know when you wrote your book, I know you learned, and you know, my dogs, I know I learned from them, and you know, from my mother and spirit, and that kind of stuff. So they come in all shapes and sizes, including I'll watch the movies, and I get lessons from the movies. It's crazy.
Oh, of course. Now, there are lots of people write about horses as healers, and I've befriended some of them. One of the messages that they give, and these are people who have a lot of horse experience, they are horse people, they talk about how a horse can mirror us. They can reflect things back to us. And what some of these people are teaching me is that when you approach a horse, they see you, and then when you get on to ride, sometimes their behavior is totally about you, and they're responding to you. And so you have to ask yourself, what is it about the horse? What's the horse is doing? Maybe they're bucking, or they're chewing, or they're misbehaving, and you feel like this horse isn't acting right. So 9 times out of 10, they're acting like you're acting. They're just mimicking what's coming from you, and they're reflecting it back. And that's one of the ways that they teach us.
Yes. Absolutely. Well, human beings mirror back to us as well. And,
well, that's true, isn't it?
We don't always see the mirrors, or we don't want to recognize them. But
especially children. Don't you think children?
Yes, definitely. Well, I'm going to actually send you a couple things because I found you on Facebook, and I'm going to send you a couple things. But I want to throw out there before we get off the line that if you would like to know more about Dr. Berne, please look her up on her website at www.rosalyn, it's ROSALYN, and then Berne, BERNE.com. And she's got stuff about her books on there as well. And then you can find her on Facebook as well. She's on Facebook, her like page. And I also put it on my Facebook if you're looking for it. But yeah, children, definitely. Because children, what do they say? We learn from the mouth of babes. So definitely we learn a tremendous amount.
I'm so glad to have been able to have a conversation with you today. It's
absolutely.
It's wonderful to know about your work and what you do and your blog and your writing and your show. And I'm really grateful that you're willing to talk with me and share my work with your listeners. So thank you.
Absolutely. Well, anytime. And I will, like I said, I'm going to send you a picture of a friend of mine who I know is going to listen to this show and just absolutely love it because she's a horse whisperer or animal communicator, whatever we want to refer it, but she lives in Kentucky. Mm-hmm. And so they take, of course, Kentucky being the horse state.
Yes.
There's so many horses there. She travels around and she works with horses all the time, and I just know that she's just going to be tickled when she hears the show today, and I'm probably going to send her your book. So.
Wonderful. So, I'm glad to know about her.
Is there anything else that you would like to bring up with the horses, or anything that you would like to share in the last few minutes of the show?
Oh, I just think that the process of learning to listen is something that we all probably need to work on, and to listen deeply, and also to trust what we're hearing. When we're listening to species that don't have the words and the capacity to speak the way we do, to trust that we actually may be able to understand more than we realize. And then for me, I'm learning to carry this into just listening to other people more deeply and to be more present with them, because when I can't hear the horses unless I'm completely present and there for them without judgment. And the more I do that with my students and with the people I care about, the more openings there seem to be for a wonderful flow and connection and learning. So, that's what I'm learning, and that's what I hope that we'll all be able to work on together as we evolve.
Yeah, because the more we listen, the more we're in the flow. Absolutely.
That's what they say. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for being on the show, and I really appreciated our conversation, and I'm sure that you'll be back on the show again sometime in the future.
Thanks.
I look forward to the connection.
All the best to you. Thank you. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Well, guys, that was Dr. Rosalyn Berne, and I know you guys enjoyed that, and definitely if you get a chance to, whoever is going to, get healing from the show, share it with them. It's been a beautiful day, and everybody have a blessed day, and thank you for listening to Soul Talk. Goodbye.